Okay, thank
We
you.
are ready.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's Monday, March 27th, 2023. It's time for our regularly scheduled city council meeting. Ask clerk to certify the meeting notice.
This meeting has been noticed in accordance with Idaho Code 74-204.
Thank you. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Heller,
Present.
Councilmember Jacobs,
Here.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Here.
Councilmember Page.
Here. Thank you. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is changes to the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
second. Got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Heller,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Enjoy your dinner. Next item, special business, fiscal year 2022 audit presentation. John Russell's here to make the presentation. Mr. Russell, if you join us, you've got things to pass out. Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that mic should be on. Let's make sure it's on.
Okay, sounds like it's on.
Okay, try it again.
Testing,
Keep talking.
we got it yet? All right.
Can you do it from there or do we do it from over here? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Turn his volume up a little. He's
All right, I'll try to talk just a little bit louder. So,
perfect. Thank you.
all right, I think we want to just hit some high points on this, right? I mean, if you want me to go in a little more detail, we can, but I'm going to start on page 1. It's got our letterhead at the top. This is the actual auditor's report. I'm just going to walk through what it says. Like I said, just high points. So that first paragraph says that we've audited your financial statements. In the next paragraph, we're giving our opinion. We're saying that they're stated fairly, or presented fairly in all material respects. So what you would consider a clean audit opinion. So congratulations to the city on that again. We follow auditing standards as informing our opinion. Management, of course, is responsible for the information that's presented in these financial statements. I mean, they are the city's financial statements. On the next page, our responsibility as auditors is to gain reasonable assurance about the financial statements and whether they're presented correctly or fairly in accordance with GAAP. There is some required supplementary information that's presented in addition to the basic financial statements. And then finally, on the last paragraph of this report on the next page, it just says that there is an other report that's presented as well. And we'll just kind of cover that real briefly. In the interest of just hitting high points, looking at page 4, this is your statement of net position for the city as a whole, including the urban renewal district, which is a component unit of the city. The governmental activities column is for activities of the city that are supported primarily by taxes. The business type activities are for activities primarily supported by fees, by user fees. So it's a little bit more of a business type, if you will. And then a couple of numbers that I'm going to point out or mention on here, a couple of sections. So that first section is the assets. Right below that is something called deferred outflows. And then if you go down past the liabilities, there's a section called deferred inflows. And then we're going to go up 2 lines, and there's a net pension liability. And I'm just going to tell you, you can ignore all of those numbers. I'm pointing them out so you can ignore them. If you're looking at this later and you're wondering what in the world are those, that has to do with your participation in Percy or in the pension plan that the state offers. And so they really have no bearing on how the city operates. Accounting standards require them to be there. And so that net pension liability of $4.7 million is kind of a scary number, but that's not something you'll ever pay out. So like I said, that's why I point those out, just so that if you're looking at this later, don't be afraid of that number. The other number that's interesting on this page in the liability section, there's a line that says unearned revenue, and that's $2,584,000. That's just recognizing that you've received some of those grant monies, those ARPA monies that have come in, but you haven't used those yet, or hadn't used those as of September 30th. And therefore, that's a liability. Until you use those, you could be required to turn those back. I'm going to jump to page 6 really quick. So this is another balance sheet that the city has. And this is for your governmental activities. Again, those are the ones primarily supported by taxes. The cash and cash equivalents, you see $6.8 million. That's a higher number than you would expect. But again, there's the 2.5, almost $2.6 million in ARPA funds that are sitting in those, that are included in that as of September 30th hadn't been used yet. The other thing to look at on here are your fund balance classifications there. I know that's something that the state controller's office is starting to look at a little bit closer to make sure that there's not an excess of unassigned fund balance. And so in looking at that to determine whether there's an excess or not, I kind of looked, and if you want to kind of put your finger in and flip ahead to page 8, I compared that to your total expenditures for the year of 8.5, almost $8.6 million, which means you've got about 6 months of reserves sitting in that unassigned fund balance, which is not excessive. So that's one of the things I like to do if I'm doing a quick down and dirty analysis of a balance sheet, is to see, okay, what are those reserves compared to my expenditures for the year?
Mr. Mayor.
Pardon me. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, what percentage would be considered excessive under the guidelines from the state controller's office?
Currently, there isn't any sort of guideline. I know a year or two ago, the legislature was trying to push something through, and they were saying about 6 months. There was a lot of pushback from entities. And really, that's something that's up to you as a board to decide as far as what's reasonable, what's appropriate for you. Given that the activities in your general fund are largely funded by property taxes, and recognizing that, I mean, you get some property tax money that comes from the county every month, but really in January and July is when the bulk of that's coming in. That's when everybody's escrow is making those payments. And so 6 months seems pretty reasonable on that. So you're definitely not excessive. But again, that kind of comes down to what you're comfortable with on that.
I'll make one other comment on that regard, because I think it's something, and I've talked to legislators about this as well, and it's not all cities are the same. So Jerome is the same size we are, but we have significantly different circumstances. So we have a 5.5 miles of river that run through town. And we've got, we're in the process of considering how we're going to mitigate the risk. And those risks are in the tens of millions of dollars to mitigate under any scenario. And we're kind of working through that now. So as the administrator here, when I look at our fund balance, we aren't in a position to ever have too much fund balance unless we have the last estimate we got. Well, I'm not going to mention it because they haven't released it publicly, but it's more than 10 times what our fund balance is, just in mitigating the flood risk here. So that's a relative thing, and John, I just wanted to insert that because that's going good for you to know as our auditor, of course, and then for those that are here in the public to understand why we, I think, in my opinion, need a pretty substantial fund balance, because that would be what you draw on for grant match and some of those kinds of things. So anyway,
Yes,
just a little explanation.
fantastic discussion. And really that kind of lends to kind of the next thing I was going to maybe mention. One of the things that you can do with that fund balance as a council, if you decide as you're accumulating that, you can set that aside. And you can commit those funds, for example, for flood mitigation. And then that doesn't show as unassigned.
Okay,
And so then you can disclose to the public, hey, we are being responsible with the tax money that we're receiving. We're building this up not to just pile up cash, but for, you know, a rainy day or for a potential emergency. And so that those funds can then show as committed. So yeah, so you guys are right on track with that. So, all right, I'm going to jump to page 8. Just really quickly, this is the income statement. The line that matters most on here really is that third one from the bottom, the net change in fund balances. You'll see that the general fund and the development services fund both operated at with a surplus of revenues over expenditures. And then we also show the library debt service fund, and you'll see that the tax revenues exactly match the payments on that debt service on that bond. And so there's no net change in fund balance on that fund. All right, I'm going to jump to page 10. Really briefly, so these are the proprietary funds. So you have a water and sewer fund, and you have a sanitation fund. Again, there's those deferred outflows, deferred inflows, and the net pension liability that we're ignoring. One minor thing to point out on the sanitation fund, that net position is actually at a negative number. So that fund is just slightly underwater, if you will. But not significantly so. So
We must be careful about saying underwater in Garden City.
yes. Yes, no pun intended there. I apologize for that. I'm not quite clever enough to just on the fly come up with that. So, all right, so that's all I was going to cover on that page. If we turn to the next page there on page 11, we'll see that the reason that has that negative net position was a transfer out to the general fund. The general fund is doing a lot of administrative work for the other funds, and those funds are then reimbursing. So that's what's caused that. So if you look at about 2/3 of the way down, there's a line that says income or loss before transfers and contributions. That's really what those funds are generating from operations there. And so you'll see that both of those funds are operating at a profit before those transfers to the general fund. All right, we're going to jump all the way to page 21. Don't want to bore anyone with the accounting stuff. So I'm skipping over note number 1, which is pretty boilerplate and kind of covers your accounting policies for the city. Note 2 about cash and investments is usually kind of a not very interesting note, but with some of the bank failures that have happened, the custodial credit risk for deposits, that second paragraph. At September 30th, you had $58,000 that was not covered by either FDIC or NCUA, which means it's exposed to credit risk. We have seen with the bank failures that FDIC is covering all deposits, even those that are in excess of those insurance amounts. And so there's not a significant amount of risk there, but that is something to be aware of. I'm not sure where you're at currently, but that is something that you can reach out to your bank and request them to collateralize is one way of doing that. Or you can spread that out through multiple banks as well to make sure that you're staying below those FDIC and NCUA limits. So
that includes our operating account, of course, and that is fluctuating because we are transferring money in that to pay our bills constantly, and so it's probably not the case that you have that you're always in excess of that. It's just as of September 30th that you were. So
Snapshot in time.
snapshot in time, exactly. So okay, so if we turn the page, You'll see that there's some investments. The table at the bottom of page 22 shows that you've got $231,000 in a money market account and almost $11 million at the state's local government investment pool, which is finally paying some interest. So that's great for those who are savers and have a balance there. I think it's about 4% right now, and I think a year ago we were talking more like 0.4%. So, all right.
Makes quite a difference.
I'm going to jump to page 31 now. A lot of what we've skipped over is a note that talks about the pensions that I keep pointing out are kind of irrelevant to you. So, I'm going to look at on page 31. I'm looking at note 9, long-term liabilities. So, there was a general obligation bond that was used to build this building that we're in. So it shows, this table shows what the balance was on last year's audit. The decrease is the principal that was paid during the year. And you'll see there's $185,000 balance remaining. And then that current amount is the amount of principal that will be paid in fiscal year 23. And then of course this matures August of 2025. So we're getting close to the end on this one. And then on the next page, page 32, you'll see that table at the top shows the principal and interest payments over the remainder of the life of that loan. Note 11 about internal balances recognizes that currently the water and sewer fund is loaning cash to the sanitation fund. All of those funds get pooled together. So overall cash is in a strong position. It's just that it's below zero in the sanitation fund. Again, that's going to be a temporary thing, that snapshot in time. And then note 11, I like to point out. So the city, as a necessary part of doing business, has access to credit cards and charge accounts. The total available credit on that is $97,500. 15, almost 16,000 of that was in use at September 30th. And this is one of the things we tend to look at a little closer as part of the audit. I do tell people, if you haven't used the wrong credit card on accident before, you're either not important enough to have a company card or you just barely got it. It just happens. People make mistakes. And so we look at that a little closer to make sure that there's policies and procedures in place to catch those mistakes if and when they happen and to correct those in a timely manner. I am happy to report that we did not see any signs of abuse of that credit. It seems to be used reasonably. And it's also not being used as an end around of, paying bills by check, to where they come before the council for approval. So sometimes you just have to, in today's world, you have to do things using a credit card, making online purchases and that sort of thing. So again, no issues with what we saw on that. So, all right, I'm going to turn to page 35. This is the budget to actual comparison schedule. I know city councils like to take a look at this. So this is set up. The first column of the original, that's the budget as you originally adopted it. If there were any budget amendments during the year, those would show in the final column. Actual is then compared, and then in that column on the right, the variance column, it's set up so if that number is a positive number, that's a favorable variance. Just as an example, for under the revenues, that first line for taxes, you'd budgeted for $4,785,000. $4,779,000 came in, so you were about $6,000 less than you'd budgeted. Therefore, that's a negative number. But overall, total revenues in the general fund came in $247,000 more than budgeted. And then even more importantly, looking at the expenditures, that's a positive number there. So that means you stayed under budget overall. With the only line that is over is the capital outlay, ended up going just a little bit over. So overall is really what matters. And so we're under. Okay, next page is the budget actual for the development services fund. You will see that this one did go over budget. And really, if you look at the charges for services, you had almost $60,000 more that came in. But on the expenditures, $34,000 more went out than was budgeted. But again, that's really due to growth, and there's not much you can do to control that as far as those expenditures. So it is over budget, but we all understand why that is, so. All right, and then finally, on page 39 is that other report that I'd mentioned. And really, all this report says is that we come in to do your financial statement audit and need to gain an understanding of how you're keeping your books, what your policies and procedures are for your accounting. And so we're looking at your internal controls to determine what audit procedures do we need to do on these financial statements, not necessarily to come in and give an opinion on your internal controls. That makes sense. Really, we don't have anything this year that we would recommend that you make changes on. You've got good policies in place, you've got good people in place. So things went really smoothly this year. I wasn't fortunate enough to come work on the audit. This is one I like to come and do because things are clean. And it really makes our job as an auditor easier. That Lisa and everybody that you've got working for you is doing a great job for you. So, are there any other questions for me?
Great. Any questions for Mr. Russell? Great, great report, and thank you. You did an excellent job of taking us through.
All right, well, hopefully I didn't bore anyone. That's one of my goals.
No, no.
All right, thanks, everybody.
No, thank you. Great.
Thank you very much.
Council, we had the presentation. Just as a little matter of protocol, I'd like the council to make a motion that we've received the audit. You don't approve an audit because the audit's the audit, but just acknowledging that on the record that we received the audit.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to acknowledge reception of the audit for year ending September 30, 2022.
Second. Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Thank you again, John. Okay. F2 is Arbor Day proclamation. Just a second, I let my machine go off. I gotta find it here.
Mr. Mayor, would it help if, would you like to use mine, Mr. Mayor?
I've got, I mean, I'm just getting there. 69, 72, 74. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the whole world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore I, John G. Evans, Mayor of the City of Garden City, Idaho, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant and care for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. In witness thereof, I have hereto set my hand on this 27th day of March, 2023. Hey, council, next item are staff reports. Those are in your packet. If you have questions on those, feel free to contact the appropriate department head.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just so excited.
Good.
Mr. Schmidt has received, I believe, a very valuable asset. Is this correct? Sorry to jump. in.
Yes.
Is that okay?
No, it is. Okay, we're on staff reports. Okay. Mr. Schmidt.
Mayor, Councilmember Jorgensen, you're absolutely right. We finally took delivery of our 2021 back truck. Yeah. Yes, so again, I appreciate all of your interest in it and your approval of the purchase. It's been out in the field now for about a week,
Oh.
so. And
Exciting.
the staff that are using that machine are ecstatic. So, yeah, it's quite an amazing piece of equipment, and we're very fortunate that we're able to purchase something like that. We're very appreciative of all of it. So thank you again. And please let me know when you want to come take a look. We'd be more than happy. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite amazing. Yeah.
I already I went and had a look.
Well, congratulations
Yes.
on the new arrival.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, you arrival.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
For those in the audience, that piece of equipment's integral to maintaining our utility systems. So it's not just the council that should be happy. Everybody's going to benefit from it
Yes.
when hopefully you never need it. So anyway, but we do maintain the system. Great. Thank you.
Okay,
Tom.
thank you.
Sorry, council member, I got ahead of you there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item G1, this is a first reading of ordinance 1036-23.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I have a memo starting on page 85 of your packet. It's just, I'll be brief. This is a code amendment to amend our municipal refuse collection system in the Garden City Code. It was passed in 88, as my memo indicates, and it hasn't been touched since 88. And there's some stuff in there that's just outdated. So what the code amendment does is it shifts the responsibility and the administration from the Public Works Director over to Lisa Lively, the clerk treasurer. It just updates it. There's some stuff in here when I was going through it. It's really interesting. Like it used to say you got to take your trash can back to your curb within 8 hours of collection. Nobody enforces that, so we're recommending we get rid of that. It's indicated that if you don't have a lid on your trash can, you're not going to get your trash picked up. We're suggesting we get rid of that because nobody looks at that. And so we've tried to update it. This was Ms. Lively's suggestion just to update this. So I'm going to ask that this be read by title only for its first reading tonight. Thank you.
okay, I entertain an action, council.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I move for a first reading of ordinance resolution, of ordinance 1036-23 by title only.
second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, with the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Jacobs,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Heller.
Yes.
First reading ordinance 1036-23, an ordinance of the city of Garden City, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Garden City Code Title IV, Public Health and Safety, Chapter 2, Municipal Refuse Collection, Section 2, Definitions, Section 3, Collection Service Provided, Use Mandatory, Section 4, Rules and Regulations, Section 5, Sanitation Service Fees, Section 7, Containers, Section 8, Storing, Eliminating Refuse, Section 9, Prohibited Acts Declared, eliminating Section 11 and Section 9, Prohibited Acts Declared, eliminating Section 11, Appeals, and Section 12, Violations, amending language and proving a summary of the ordinance and providing an effective date.
Great, thank you. Council, that concludes the business on our agenda this evening. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I so move.
got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Thank you. We stand adjourned.